All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is David P. France. I'm actually sitting here in Switzerland, in Basel, Switzerland. And for the third interview, one of my friends out in Nigeria calls it the lockdown series. For my third interview, I'm going to introduce you to someone who had a real big influence in my, not just my artistic life, but my, the broader life in general. Enrique Cruz DeJesus, he's the artistic director for Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company. He's located in New York City, in the it's not Lower East Side, East Village, right?
Yes.
Yes. And basically, well, Enrique, I've known you, for a long time, I think since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been dancing for longer, much longer than that. I'm not going to go into, I'm going to briefly read the bio so people can get an idea of how much you've done, because it's a lot, right? And what's interesting is, this is what you sent is the package that you send to presenters. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's basically all the stuff I sent to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me read this. You guys be patient with me. So, Enrique Cruz DeJesus trained at Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company under the artistic direction of co-founder Ronn Pratt and Andy Torres, while simultaneously studying at the Darvash School of Ballet and the Dance Theater of Harlem. As a dancer, he worked with several modern dance companies and notable choreographers such as Eleo Pomare, Talley Beatty, Gary DeLoatch, DeLoatch, Marshall Roumain and George Faison. During this time, he began what became an active career as a choreographer, singer, actor, and teacher in theater, film, and concert dance. And in 1998, he became the artistic director of Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company.
That's true.
Welcome. So what's going on, Enrique?
A lot is going on, a lot. But, you got to go with this, so artists bring their best stuff when we get to these challenges.
Yeah. If you could tell the audience how you began, I think it's a really interesting story. And there's one, I think I have most of the story. I'm sure there are details that I don't recall, but I remember when you would tell us bits and pieces of your growing up. So how did you start in dance?
Well, I started incredibly late in dance. I was a cook in a steakhouse. Before that, I was a shorter cook, and before that, I was a dishwasher. Working from 14 to about, 19, 20, years old. And then during my pastimes, trying to be a survivalist, I got introduced to a friend of mine who became a friend of mine named Lamont Lumberger. And we met at the steakhouse that I was the chef there. And he said, oh, let's go hang out. We went to hang out and we hit the clubs. And the weird thing, he said he was a trained dancer and he was watching me dance. He said, have you ever taken dance before? And I said, nah. He said, you know how many turns you did? And I said, nah. He said, you did about 4 or 5 turns and you keep doing them all the time. So then he told me, he said, oh, you should, take classes. And that's how the journey began. At that time, I was 20 years old.
Wait a minute. You started at 20?
At 20, yep.
No, I didn't know that. I thought you started earlier than that, or at least you had some exposure. You had some exposure before that. That was the first time?
That was the first time. But, I had a little bit of gymnastics background, martial arts background like that. Right. But I started really late, but I was introduced to teachers that made you knowledgeable of what you should try to get, how you get it, and how informed do you put that process going. So they were not only your teachers and your choreographers that you were doing their works, but they were also telling you which classes you should take and who you should be exposed to.
Right. And so this was under, you took classes at Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance?
Mm-hmm.
And
at Alpha Omega was my first training studio that I was going on. And then those teachers recommended me to other teachers that I should study under also.
Now, at the time, I mean, in terms of the numbers of Black choreographers, dancers, and teachers, I mean, it seemed to be, I think it was sort of a very special time, at least the late 70s, early 80s. Am I right about that?
Yeah, late 80s for me, early 90s, it was like the hub of Black dance. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful journey that I had, along with people that were graduates from Juilliard and members of the Ailey Company. I was along with those people and danced with them in different concerts and so forth.
Right. The teachers, I just remember you talking about your teacher. I can't remember her name. She was
Gabriella Darvash.
Darvash. And you used to talk about her a lot, right? And she was, you know, giving you.
Yeah, she was a great influence in my career because I was training under Alpha, and I think you remember Ron Alexander too, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay, so Ron Alexander, I trained with him for about a good year, and then he told me I should start studying with Madame Darvash.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Literally 3 years under her wing, my career completely took off. Completely. It
and
changed my.
Do you remember her background? What, any details of her background?
She was a master teacher and choreographer for the Cure of Ballet. And she won a lot of recognition in recent time, but she was really well known, respected over there. And that's when she came to the States, was working literally in a coffee shop, and somebody knew her as this famous choreographer from Cure. Right. And they asked her, "What are you doing working in a diner?" And she goes, "Well, I have to earn a living." And that person got on his thing and got her a studio, and lo and behold, the Darvash School of Ballet started.
Yeah. With regard to Alpha Omega, I remember also you would always talk about it being an after-school program, some sort of. So it started as an after-school program, as I remember.
Well, yeah, it started as an after-school program in different high school, like Norman Thomas is where I started taking the classes over there. And I was one of the older kids, but Dee Dee, Dolores Vanison-Blakely, allowed me to take the class. And she also introduced me to this other ballet teacher that was teaching at Norman Thomas High School. During that time, I started taking classes in the studio, in the Alpha Omega studio, and that's where the youth program was, which was from 15 to 24. And that's when I went in and I got exposed to all these great teacher choreographers. It's a little different being trained by teacher choreographer than per se a professional teacher.
How so? What's the difference?
Because not only are they training you the technique and the philosophy behind the technique, but they're also teaching you how to perform, even when you're learning a technique.
Right.
And to me, that was like information that the kids don't have today.
And why do you think, I mean, I'm going to diverge just a bit. Why do you think that is the case? What's going on now, or what's not happening now that was happening then, and vice versa? What do you see
I think what's happening now is that there's a lot of great technicians, for sure. And there's a lot of great dancers that are out there, but I feel, for me, that the information of learning how to tell stories lag behind technique. Now technique is the thing, and then I wind up saying to myself, well, what are you dancing about? Because, you know, I could always find a gymnast that could do it better, you know? So that's just my take on it. But you got to remember, I was groomed by people who were concert dancers, Broadway performers, singers, actors, comedian, that it was an education that is hard for me to explain why you need it once you've gone through the concert setting, or if you want to go into the commercial setting, you already have the tools,
right,
you know, to get those jobs.
right. You said just another to touch on another point about concert dance. I also remember that you would talk about concert dance and how that was like the preeminent, or you felt it was. I don't know if I'm phrasing it the right way, but it's almost like it's like the high jump of dance in some respect, because you can go on for not hours and hours, but for long periods of time. I mean, the piece can be designed for what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that. And I remember right after 9/11, which is when I started as the company, this is when you choreographed Dark September, right?
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? And I think that was pretty long. Wasn't that long? It was like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that was long. That's a while ago. We have, funny is we have not performed that piece since the few times that we performed it at that concert at Aaron Davis Hall.
Yes.
And I told Donna that I would love to bring that piece up and rework it to the way I wanted to do it. And she said, I don't know. I said, I don't know either, because at that time, you could be very political. Now, if you're political, you get slammed by everybody,
I mean, look, how long that was like, what, 20, that was what, 18, what, 19 years ago. Time has gone fast, right? I mean, it's gone real fast. It doesn't feel like 19 years ago. I mean, I went through the documents you sent, and I actually said, wait a minute, I'm actually in one of those reviews.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I'm not going to say it was a blur. It wasn't a blur, but I think there were so many things going on in my life at that time that I had like 3 things running parallel, maybe 4 things running parallel. So when I would come to rehearsal, I just would be, I would just watch and look at you guys. I wasn't really, I was committed, but I wasn't as like, oh, I got it, I was very relaxed in being there. I knew that I had to be there for some reason. But I digress. Let me go back to one of the things that I also recall, which is that you talked about the founders of Alpha Omega and how important they were to you. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, I mean, it changed where my path in life, where I was. I was working jobs that I was trained to do in order to better my salary, right, per se. But when I was introduced to dance, I had a purpose now. I realized that this is what I wanted to do, and how I was going to do it was the same approach in which when I was a dishwasher. At that time, I was making $175 a week in a restaurant. And then I asked the show order cook, how much did he make? And he was like, oh, he makes $275 a week. So I told him, I said, why don't you teach me how to be a show order cook? And he did. And then like a few weeks later, he was going on vacation, and he told me to fill in for him. And lo and behold, my salary went from $175 to $275. And then there, I just started learning more about cooking. And, when I was training under Alpha, while still maintaining my job, I was making $675 a week. Under the table, obviously, but I call it survival money. But I did it for a few years also, so. That's and I took the same discipline of doing that, and I did it with dance. Alpha Omega got me to a certain level. They introduced me to other people. I went there, got trained, and within 3 years, I was already a professional dancer.
So that was Ronn, Pratt, and Dolores. She was the founder as well, right?
She was one of the founders, and she was also one of the teachers and choreographers in Alpha Omega. You got to remember that in Alpha Omega, they didn't have the company anymore. The company rebirthed again under Andy Torres' artistic direction when Pratt Pratt passed away.
Okay.
You know, so.
Yeah. Well, you talked about Donna. What is Donna's title now? Is it still the same title as it was? She's the associate director.
Donna is one of those people that she likes to be extremely low key.
Right.
But she was always Dee Dee's second hand. So Dee Dee, you know, she followed Dee Dee's steps, and after a while, Donna was writing out the grants and acting like an executive director, but she didn't want to be announced when Dee Dee was still alive. Now she is, and she announced that she was. But she's been executive director even during Dee Dee's time. You know, so it's been almost as long as I've been artistic director. 20 years.
So it's clear for everybody. You know, I mean, I'm gonna let you tell me, or I'm gonna let you tell them who Donna is. I mean, we just said Donna. Donna. Let me see if I can. You guys were like yin and yang in some respect, right? So, just so you guys know, like Enrique, I mean, you know this. Enrique would get mad so many times. I think a lot of times we would be there and it was like, well, what's going to happen? It was a bit of drama. That was good. I mean, it always comes with your working, but it's just interesting how you would express yourself. And I'd never met anybody who was so passionate about so many different things. And the way that you just expressed it was quite unique. And Donna was sort of the cool to right? It was hot and cold. It was like hot and cold. And how long have you known her? You've known her for like.
Oh man, I know Donna since she was 15 years old.
15 years old, right? I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
But
I mean, it was great to see the dynamic because, like, let's say I remember one time, or more than one time, like you would try to explain to her what you wanted, and maybe it didn't come out exactly the way, and then you know she would kind of look, she would look at you like, you know, and it was a constant, you know, a back and forth. But I mean, you guys were you and Dolores and Donna were like a stool, three-legged stool, three-legged stool. And you know, I'll go on to the next thing, but just so you guys know, I mean, the same way that you felt about your teachers, you guys were that for me, because I didn't have I mean, I had training in high school, but that was my first, maybe you could say I started later than you. I think I was 30 something.
Guys have a tendency to pick up and learn quicker when they fall in love with the art form. Right.
Now, what's interesting is that I danced in high school. I was a gymnast in high school. I did both while in high school.
Wow.
So I was the captain of the gymnastics team the junior year. And there was some controversy with dance after junior year. Like, I think I quit both. Because I was like, you know, and in some respect, this leads me to the next thing. I mean, I got pissed off because people did not understand where I was coming from, and just thought I thought they didn't respect what I was doing. And I had put in 4 years, you know, from, you know, 9 to 12. So when I met you, I was like, I already know what's going on. And just so you guys know, I met Enrique, it was right after 9/11. There was a woman who taught ballet class on Sunday. I was convinced by someone to take these classes. After the first couple of weeks, I started to break out a little bit, and then she started to say, hey, wait, something's going on. And she started to design the class so that the men, because there were like 3 doctors and 3 professional doctors and me, she redesigned it so the men started going first. So, you know, usually we were in the back, right? And it was all for women.
Right.
And then, you know, we started like, you know, kind of started doing our thing, and she started putting us in the front, making us do jumps. And then 9/11 happened, and then she was like, all right. And she kept saying, oh, you should meet Enrique, you should meet her. And then after 9/11, she's like, all right, we're going to set it up.
Wow.
So that is how the audition happened. And I remember I had not really danced seriously, even in that Sunday class. I was like kind of not going through the motions, but I still was like, you know. So then I just said, okay, if this is happening, David, go for it, go with it. And then I just remember it was just you and me in a room, and you were like, can you do this? Boom, you know, can you? And you showed me, and then, you know, you say, hey, come on in. So, you know, it's interesting how, particularly for guys in dance, you know, their path is different. And you mentioned that. Elaborate or give us some insight or your feelings on that subject, because I still think it's an issue that exists.
I think that the male dancer, by its own spirituality, its own status, it's a beautiful one body to watch when they are doing whatever they do, the choreography or the phrases, combinations, and so forth. I think when we start labeling a whole bunch of stuff there, the beauty of the male starts getting a little confused, because at the same time as you perfect the technique, you have to perfect what you're dancing about. And I think along the years now, it just became a blur where the spirituality of the male dancer doesn't always come through to me of what they're dancing about, without talking about sexuality or anything like that. I think information is key to learning dance, not just from its technical form, but also by characters, by storytelling, about history, all these things that you have to learn to layer the dancer's mind. Otherwise, you just become one of these technicians that I keep saying that's not enough. That's just not enough, you know. And I mean, right now I have a group of dancers that are, you know, with their degrees, they're great in what they do, but it's also like, I tell them, I said, I don't believe what you're doing. And then they go, what do you mean? I said, I don't even know if you understand what you're doing, you know. And it's you know, it's like, for instance, I was teaching Tabernacle for one of the concerts that we did about 2 years ago, last year, I think it was. And I gave them the book of what the ballet was about. And I tell them who the work is by and why you have to fill in the gaps in the choreography, because it had a postmodern sort of style that was choreographed by Eleo Pomare. And you'd be surprised that an 11-minute piece took so long to coach and to cultivate them in order for them to understand what they were dancing about. And the difference between now and back then was information. And the information, because a lot of us weren't perfect technicians, but we were great performers. And I think that the lack of learning what performance level means is information in how to tell the story. And I think that information is not cultivated enough.
Do you think that it's something that is very, well, you've said it's difficult to teach, but I mean, some people have it and then some people don't. Can someone learn it? I mean, honestly, can someone learn it? How to be, you know, emotionally available, giving with the story? Can somebody learn that and it be authentic?
I think that everybody could learn if you're open to learning it, you know. So if you're open to learn the things that are hard for you to perform about, and you're willing to learn it, you'll start understanding that it's not just about these other tools that you have. It's about really connecting between you, the artist, and the audience that you're performing to, and connecting that story for them to say, oh man, I got that, you know. You have that. I believe that you had it. I think you always question your technique. I said, you're one of the few people at that time who have these amazing facility. And I said, man, he doesn't even know what he's actually capable of doing, when it took me so long to develop mine. And I said, don't worry about your age. I said, don't worry about your age. Just worry about how you take the information and execute the information as you're doing the choreography. And you managed to do that. I remember when we were doing that concert, and I said, don't worry about it. Just do what you do. I'll tell you when you're doing it wrong, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, just briefly to kind of, to give you this, I just think I had a lot of fear. I think the fear was the biggest thing. And that, that's a story for another time, right? That's a story for another, but the fear was huge. And I'm telling you, I think the fear just stopped in general, we're saying. Like, how about 2 years ago? You know what I'm saying? I'm not just in terms of dance, I'm saying life, right? So it's not like I would wake up in the morning and think, okay, like I'm scared of my shadow. But, your mind, right? It really is, when they say the mind in the body, right? The mind, body, soul. I think that is one of the things, or should be one of the things, that the dancer is constantly working on. So that when they go on stage, it is like they are unleashed and there's nothing holding them back. Right? There's absolutely nothing. So it's almost like, you could be in a trance almost, or the spirit comes through you. And that's difficult if you have a lot of fear. You're in rehearsal and all these things.
You know what, David? Also, fearless, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, goes a long way.
Yes.
And I remember learning a really astute choreography from Eleo, from Talley, from Alfred Goldman, from what's his name? Not George Faison, but the jazz teacher. You remember him?
Fred Benjamin.
Yeah. And Gary DeLoatch and all of those guys. And the one thing that I always learned about them, they were always fearless. They didn't care, And I said, oh shit, that's what I need to do. Yeah. I need to do that without caring about how great was my jump or my kicks or my turns. Eventually I mastered all that. But it was really about how to perform it, how to shine. And of course, I try to convey those things in my dancers, but I also have to try to teach them how to hold back when you're dancing in core and then dancing as a soloist or as a duet or as a trio. You have to know the difference between those things. Otherwise, you won't know when to be fearless when you're doing a solo. You'll be dancing in that same level of mentality. I said, that doesn't work, Right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But everybody gets wild by a leg and a turn and a jump, And I don't get wild by that anymore. Like, please stop.
Well, when you brought up a couple of things, and I'm interested in. I'll hit 3 things off at once. Can you talk about Eleo Pomare in terms of who he was and his relationship to you and to Alpha Omega? That's the first thing. The second thing is elaborate a bit on, how can I say, when you became the artistic director, and then we're going to go into the fundraising aspect of a dance company. So the first is Eleo, because you remember we went to Florida, and Eleo was there, and again I was in a daze, right? I was just watching everything unfold, and I don't even remember. We did perform. We performed, but I can't even remember what it was or whatever. But it was a lot of stuff happening because he was going to be there. He was there. And I just knew that he was an important person. I didn't necessarily know how how he was positioned in the family tree of dance, of the Black dance. experience, but I sensed it because, you know, everything that he was saying, you know, you guys would be listening to. Explain to the audience who he was. And
Okay. Eleo was a genius, first of all. He graduated from Performing Arts High School, and he was already getting recognition as a choreographer at 18 years old. Imagine that. How I got introduced to Eleo was through Alpha under the direction of Andy Torres. Andy brought him in when we were in that level to start learning more mature choreography. And one of the first pieces that he choreographed on us was Tabernacle. He also taught one of the dances, including myself, Narcissus Rising, in which Donna performed more often now. So we all learned these really heavy works from Tabernacle, Hex, Narcissus Rising, Blues for the Jungle, and Tabernacle. Those were the works that we performed a lot of his. Now, Eleo was not only a choreographer, he was also an educator about what you're dancing about. Why are you doing that? That's not what I gave you. Try it again. Why are you doing, you know, he will always question, and then he'll always make you think. Now, if I take those same steps right now to do with the new dances, they're like, they won't get that. But we learn along the way that both Andy and Marshall groomed us that that is the lesson. The lesson is to get into the skin of what the choreographer wants, what you're dancing about, what's the truth about those movements. And Eleo was one of those teachers that knew how to say it in a way that you understood it. You know, it wasn't about him being a choreographer, it's about you understanding the difference between different philosophies of dance. And of course, I gravitated to those things. I can't remember the other question that you asked.
well, the second one was in terms of when you became artistic director of Alpha Omega, because I think when I met you, wasn't Dolores was still artistic director, or you were associate? That was just briefly though.
I was acting artistic director after Marshall Roumain left the organization. And the weird part is that I wanted to introduce different things to the company. And of course, I got pulled back from the board at that time, including Dee Dee. But it's because, you know, I was still new to the game, and they didn't quite understood where I was going with my personal choreographic style. After a while, Dee Dee started just trusting me a lot. And of course, I was still getting pushback from the board, because sometimes you have boards that just don't believe in you, you know, and I go, well, damn. I said, at one time, I said, well, we booked Florida. Remember we did that Florida gig, right? And then we booked North Carolina. Right?
I remember, yeah. And
we started booking all these things. And I said, well, how much more proof do you want? I mean, one gig paid us $12,000, another gig paid us $14,000. And I thought that we were finally creating our brand of dance. Anyway, Eleo was the one that enforced my truth in what I do. And I remember that concert that we did at the Ailey City Group Theater, in which you did Patiently Waiting with Shantae.
Right.
And Eleo was the one who, that Monday morning after the concert, he said, go to the grocery store and pick up the New York Times. And I was so nervous to buy it because, you know, to expose yourself, you're gonna get criticized by everybody. I picked up the Times, and it says 4 out of the 5 work came close to the master's work. And I just thought that was the highest compliment. And I don't know if you remember the program, but we did Patiently Waiting, Tango, the Tango piece. We did Narcissus Right. Oh no, we did Wrath. Right. And we did Truculence. We did only a few pieces. 4 out of the 5 got a great review. And I knew then that I was onto something. And that's where the other words, Pegal, came out of that, and
Right.
the Stevie Wonder piece, the Donny Hathaway piece, and all that stuff came after that. But,
Right.
you know, like anything, it takes time until you get into your stew.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I think I was with the company, I don't know if I performed 2007. I think I was there from 2001 to 2006, and then I was about to leave. I think we performed, or I didn't, I don't know if I performed 1 year, I think it was at the end of 2007. I left for Switzerland December 2007.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
you wind up doing Through Wonder's Eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, you know, Enrique, you have to understand, like, it was as if I was there, but I wasn't there. I was there dancing, but my mind I had 3 or 4 things going parallel. So when I would go in a rehearsal, just to give you and then we're going to go back. I think that last year before I was going to leave, I knew I was going to leave. I said, okay, David, when you go into that rehearsal, because I knew I was dealing with fear, you're going to rehearse as if you are performing it for the stage. And I had made that distinction, right? And at least in my mind, because I said, hey, you know, this is, I felt like there was going to be a change. And I think that last concert, the one that I was in, was at Ailey, at the Ailey Theater, because we blew it out. I think we blew it out then. I mean, we did really well.
No, that was a big concert, yeah.
Yeah, we blew it. And I think that, you know, I've told you before, the tango piece was amazing. And just so you know, right now in Switzerland, I'm working with a flamenco school in Zurich. So they are looking at me like, how you know how to do all stuff?
how you know how to do all those things?
Yeah, and then they speak Spanish once they like, you know Spanish? I mean, I understand it. I'm like, yeah, I understand it. Why? They ask me why. Well, anyway. So you know, we're doing that now. But I remember, you know, during rehearsal, I said, look, I gotta figure out a way to get through the fear, right? And that part of that, and I'm not sure if performers deal with it a lot. They have different techniques. You know, that is what it is. Let's go to the fundraising, because I think this is also interesting. You mentioned the board and raising money, and I think that last year I had some insight of what was going on with the board. What are your feelings about, you know, the fundraising aspect of it? I mean, you've done so much with regard to the artistic side.
You know, I think that the board had great intention, and maybe 1 or 2 board members had a different take of what their role should be. That was one. I think that when we attempted to do many fundraisers, a few of them that I was hands-on throughout, and then another few that Walter Santiago was involved, and I think you performed for that fundraiser. And I'm going to remind you, we did it was in Jersey. We did Pegal, and I think it was used to do so, and someone else, I don't remember. But we did the only excerpts of Pegal. And I think Walter, and these were all Walter's people, because he used to work for IBM computers. He was one of the CEO for the company and whatnot. But he raised almost like $22,000 on that one luncheon that we did this performance for. And he was one of the few board members that understood that it's not about telling artistic direction what to do, but to believe in what they're doing. Well, anyway, as you know, the board members also were getting older, you know. So every time we had meetings, some of them didn't attend, some, you know, so it was always something. And after a while, I was just like, you know what? I know we need them in paper. I know that they'll show up, they'll donate that $250 or, you know, whatever it is that they could give, but they were never pretty, we never really got into the meat of how to really fundraise. And right now, when we were in the mix of trying to get this facility that we are in now, you know, you would send the emails to them to please come, and they would come, and, you know, they'll see but the fear was, how are we going to raise money to fix this building?
Right.
Instead of not have fear. Well, with Dee Dee, she, you know, she didn't care. She was like, I don't know where we're going to find the money, but we're going to wait this out. Anyway, we joined this group called Fort's Arts Block, which was, at that time, was 13 organizations that advocated to get these 6 or 7 buildings on the block. They paired us together. We, each organization bought the building for $1, and then we figure out how to, as a group setting, and then learned that there was a way to get money from the state and the city. So through each matching dollar, the city will match it also. Mm-hmm. Sometimes $5 for each $1 that you raise. And I remember Dee Dee started off with taking a loan of $50,000. And then that started the momentum. The councilwoman gave us $100,000. The borough president gave us $100,000. The mayor's office gave us $175,000. And throughout the years, as we were trying to fundraise to get this building gutted, bring up to code, it took almost $5 million to get this facility the way it's supposed to be. And it was not, we're in our 4th year in the building now.
Right.
But it took 15 years to get here, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, of course. So when I saw you last, that was like a couple years ago. When was that? Like,
yeah, that was like a year and a half when you were in the city for.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the part that I think is undervalued and overlooked. So of course, you know, watching you, and you started talking about the building. I think when I first started working with you, you were talking about this building.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, you know, and again, it was more like me observing because I had never seen anyone go through the process, right? So, you know, I was, again, that may have been another parallel track. I said, well, I wonder if he's going to get the money, you know. That was this, in addition to the, you know, learning the choreography and dealing with whatever was going on in my life, you know. And tell the audience, or tell everyone where the building is, and give us a little bit more information about the facility. Because I remember I was quite surprised when I walked in. It was like
well, you'd be surprised. It's changed even more because we finally got what they call a full light system in. So we have what they call a 9-universe lighting system in our studio now. And, you know, we do presentations, lectures, all kinds of stuff. But the building, oh my God, it took 15 years. And the first thing that the city tells you once you purchase a building for $1 under non-for-profit status or cultural use only, they tell you that you have to raise the money on your own, but that's not completely true. You could raise the money by also applying for money from different government entities like the councilwoman, the borough president, the mayor's office, and so forth. And that was the journey. So while I was talking about the building during your time, everybody didn't quite understand what I was saying because I was learning in the process myself. But when we went into what they call breaking ground, they initiate breaking ground, the renovations are going to start. It was sort of like, wow, I'm actually seeing this building get renovated. And even during those times, I was telling people, they still didn't quite believe me until the building actually opened. And it was really weird. It's funny, you were talking to Danny G, right?
Yes.
But Danny G also, when we booked, Danny G hired us to do City Parks and Summer Stage for 2 different gigs. But during that time, we were still not moved in the building. But she, you know, I would talk to her. I said, yeah, one day we're going to move in there, you know. And it was literally only a few years after that, you know. So, you know, It's an amazing journey. Now everybody wants to know how to do it. I was like, yeah, that's gonna take a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's interesting because, and then I'm gonna get to the last question before we break. But I knew, it's almost like this. I knew that when the whole thing started with the Sunday ballet class, I knew something was going to happen as a result of that. So at least there was fear, but I knew that if I did what I knew how to do, and that's something that's so inside of my soul, that things would move, right? So when I started doing it, this whole chain of events started to happen right around 9/11, and I just had to let it go and let it be. So when the ballet teacher introduced me to you, I knew right then, I was like, well, yeah, she's correct. Like, it was almost as if there was like a higher self that was saying, yeah, she's right. So I knew that I just was gonna just hang in there, right? As long as I needed to hang in there. I didn't have any kind of end date, right? But I said, this guy's doing something. I mean, I knew that you were committed. I knew you were committed. So I had not seen a lot of committed people in my life. I don't come across a lot of committed people. There are a lot of people that just give up when things go south, right? So
I think, David, the arts is one of those things that you really have to believe in, and that you know that you're made for it. That being said, I also feel that as art creators or dance makers, that the dancer have to also know the reality of this field, because it doesn't matter, right? You could be one of those people who came out with your BA in dance or whatever, however you get these degrees, and they're going to start from scratch when they jump into the field. So all that doesn't matter. It only matters because they'll know. A lot of these choreographers or people who run their own company, they know if you could perform or not. But for us, we used to say, if you know how to take direction, we'll make you a dancer.
Right.
And as simple as that, but it takes time,
Yes. Well, look, I'm gonna leave you with that. I mean, we could go on and on. I wanted to cover, touch upon a couple of, well, not more than a couple of points. But look, it's been nice. I mean, it's great to see you. I've told Enrique that, oh yeah, I'm gonna come back. We're gonna do some kind of thing. I knew that there was something else coming. And when this situation arose, I thought, okay, now is the time. It was as if I was thinking, what's coming? And when this situation that we're currently in happened, I didn't even have to think. It came right through me. The speed in which I set the lockdown series, the speed in which it came together was like, I can't, I mean, when you think of ideas for dance, it was very similar. I knew who I was going to talk to. I knew it was going to, our first two videos, people are impressed with the content because we're not getting that content anywhere, I don't think.
No.
We're not
reality.
Getting it, right?
The truth. We're not here putting on a show. I'm in the studio right now.
Yes.
It's weird. So just for your audience, Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company is at 70 East 4th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. And it's a studio theater. So we have open classes, we have rentals, we have rehearsal space, and all that good stuff. You could log on to alphaomegadance.org to see more of what we have. But David, let me tell you something. We're still a small organization, and I'm very proud that even being this small makes me feel very big, because we went a long way. We're getting ready to celebrate our 50th anniversary, believe it or not, And we're just waiting to this COVID thing, miles down before we jump into that, But
Wow.
It's what it is, you know.
It is. Look, you just have to go with it and be, how do you say, flexible is I think is overused, but resilient is the word that people are using now, right? Right. So anyway, thank you, Enrique.
Thank you, David. Listen, man, keep doing what you're doing. I saw the Danny G and the Eric lecture. I know there's 2 more that you have there already.
No. You're the 3rd one. You're interview number 3.
Okay.
I have them on 2 different. I have them on 2 different platforms. So I have there's a platform called BitChute, and there's of course the YouTube that everybody knows. So I'm going to put them. Your interview on both of those platforms, and I will forward that information. We'll make sure that all of your information is in the description box, and you know, everybody check Enrique out. Look, we maybe have to put some links to the videos that you have. If you have videos there, we'll make sure.
Oh yeah, there's videos in Facebook and alphaomegadance.org. There's stuff that they could see there, you know. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna start presenting online presentations with both solo dancers, musicians, and so forth. So we're gonna do a little performance series, you know. I'll send it to you, you know.
Good. Good. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, or this afternoon where you are. I'm actually going on 11 p.m. or 11:15 here.
Damn. Listen, say here to you, brother. Have a beautiful night. Pour yourself a glass of wine and, you know, just chill and do what you do.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.